Right, so we were working on transformations of functions, and we were doing complex transformations where there are multiple ones involved. We want to do a couple of more problems. You get just more practice, and sometimes you'll see these more complex ones. Pretty common to see them in this course. In a college algebra, they don't get nearly this complex, but pre-calc 1, yeah. Basically, pre-calc 1 is kind of like college algebra on steroids with a lot of extra material. It's kind of the continuation of college algebra, and it's on steroids. Okay. So we haven't done anything like this quite yet. So anytime you see a problem like this, where you have inside of the house, so we have like under the radical. So basically the parent, let's look at the parent. The parent is going to be y equals the square root of x, right? We got y equals the square root of the x. That's the parent function, the square root function. But if inside of the house, that's under the radical in this case, right? Under the radical is inside of the function, or inside of the house. If you have like a number out in front of the x, which we do, right? We have a -2. And then you have another number that's added or subtracted. What you're going to have to do, you're going to have to factor. So let me show you how you do this. You have y equals the square root. So you're going to have to factor out. See this 2 right here, this -2? You're going to have to factor out that -2. And then what does it leave you with? Well, what times -2 gives you -2x? X. And then what times -2 gives you +6? -3. So you have to factor like that. So you actually have y equals the square root of x as your parent. And then what you're going to do, you're going to look at that minus sign. What is that minus sign? I'm going to make it really red there. That minus sign, it's inside of the house in front of the x, right? That's going to be a reflection about the y-axis. Reflection about the y-axis. And then after the minus sign in front of the x stuff, you have this 2. Let's try to make it an orangish color, 2. What does that 2 do? Well, that 2 is inside of the house in front of the x. That is going to be a horizontal compression. Horizontal, if I can spell horizontal. Compression by a factor of 1/2. You have to take the reciprocal of 2 when you're inside of the house. Horizontal compression by 1/2. So basically it means you would multiply the x values by 1/2. And then finally, this -3 here, that's after you've already done the factorization, this -3 in the parentheses, that's going to be a horizontal movement. Is it going to be a shift left or a shift right? Well, it's going to be the opposite of the sign when it's inside of the house. It's going to be right 3. Now, maybe you remember earlier I combined a negative with a 2 when it was out in front of the house. We're going to do this when it's inside of the house. We're going to combine these together. So here, we're going to put this -2 together, and we're going to look at -1/2. We're going to take the reciprocal of -2 and make it -1/2. And we're going to multiply the x values by -1/2. So this basically multiplies the x values by -1/2 when you put those two together. So you take the reciprocal of -2 when you're inside of the house, you get -1/2. So that does 2 things at once. It flips everything about the y-axis, and it compresses things by a factor of 1/2. We're going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, so combining those steps. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to start off with my square root function. Writing down my y-axis values. X-axis values, I'll go from, let's see, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, negative 1, 2, 3, negative 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, negative 9. So when you're graphing the square root function, you plug in 0, square root of 0 is 0. You plug in 1, the square root of 1 is 1. Square root of 4 is 2, and the square root of 9 is 3. So normally you get something like this, right? That wasn't too accurate. Let me try that again. Okay, that'll be good enough. Now the thing is, I'm going to multiply my x coordinates by negative 1/2. Come on, this is not writing. So I'm going to take every single point, and I'm going to take the x coordinate and multiply it by negative 1/2. So let's take 9. Let's take 9, okay, comma 3. 9, comma 3. This is on the far right here, 9, comma 3. Let's take the x coordinate of 9 and multiply it by negative 1/2. So what's negative 1/2 of 9? It would be negative 4.5. So if you imagine where negative 4.5 is, it would be like right here, right on the x-axis. So I'm going to do negative 4.5, 3 right there, okay? Okay, now I'm going to take my next point coming from the right, which is 4, 2. And I'm going to multiply the x coordinate by negative 1/2. What's 4 times negative 1/2? 4 times negative 1/2 is negative 2. So I'm going to have negative 2. I should be putting these in red. Okay. Now let's go to 1, comma 1, that point right there. Let's look at the x coordinate. The x coordinate is 1. What happens when you multiply 1 times negative 1/2? Well, you get negative 1/2. So you get negative 1/2, 1. And then for 0, 0, that's the center. You multiply the x coordinate of 0 by negative 1/2, you get 0, so you still get 0, 0. So things are going to do this kind of thing. That's not too pretty. Let me try this one more time. Okay, that's better. So basically what we've done, we flipped the green graph about the x-axis. I'm sorry, the y-axis, right? And then we kind of scrunched up the green graph into a smaller space. So it's compressed it. Okay, now one final thing we have to do is shift everything right 3 points to the right. 3 units to the right. So we're going to take the vertex, or the right endpoint of 0, 0 for the red graph, and move it to the right 3. 1, 2, 3. And we get it at 3, 0. We're going to take, what do we take next? Negative 1/2, 1, and we're going to move it 3 to the right. And we're just going to go 1, 2, 3 to the right. So that would be at 2.5, comma 1. All right, then we're going to take negative 2, 2 and move it 3 to the right. 1, if I can get this to right. 1, 2, 3. It'll be right there. And I'm going to take 4.5, comma 3. I'm going to move it 3 to the right. 1, 2, 3. And it would be right there at negative 1 point. Negative 1.5, comma 3. And we connect these. To form our final graph here. I'll try to get rid of these other markings. Okay, there we go. So that's my final graph. This is y equals the square root of minus 2 times x minus 3 in parentheses, and then close out the parentheses. Or you can write it the other way if you want to. where you distribute the -2 through. Okay, so that's a slightly more difficult one because you have to do that factoring step first. All right, we want to do one final graph here. This will be our number 5 for complex graphs. This one's not too hard, but it's kind of hard to draw all on the same set of axes, so I'll do it in multiple steps. You think about what the parent here is. This is one that I don't use a whole lot. It's y equals 1 over x. It's the reciprocal function. So inside of the function, you have this +1. So being inside of the function basically means being in the denominator with the x. So when you're in the denominator with the x, you're on the inside of the function. Anything outside of the denominator that's separate from the 1 over x piece, like the -2, that would be outside the function. So I have +1 inside of the house. That's going to shift everything right 1. And then this -2 outside of the house, that's going to shift everything down 2. So basically, I'm starting off with this reciprocal function and then moving right 1 and down 2. So I'll do this in stages, I guess. So you can see the process. Okay, so let's not forget that we have this asymptote here in purple. These asymptotes, horizontal and vertical. So make my markings. So your key points are 1/2, 2, 1, 1, and 2, 1/2. Okay, I'll make these solid lines. And I'm going to have -2, -1/2, -1, -1, -1/2, -2. So these are just reciprocal numbers. Okay, so the first thing we were going to do, so this is y equals 1 over x, the parent. The first thing we're going to do, we're going to shift right 1. So I'm going to make another graph over here. Where we shift everything 1 to the right. So I'm going to take my purple asymptotes and shift everything to the right one. So the horizontal asymptote doesn't change if you shift it to the right one, but the vertical asymptote, which was previously at the y-axis, shifts to the right here about this vertical line, x equals 1. Okay, and now I'm going to take my key points and shift them all to the right. So the key point here, which is, I'm going to say this is 2, 1/2, is going to shift over 1 to the right to 3, 1/2. And the key point here at 1, 1 is going to shift 1 to the right, is going to become 2, 1. And this key point here, which is at 1/2, 2, is going to shift 1 to the right and become 1.5, 2. Now you have this right piece like this. Remember, they follow the asymptotes, but they never touch the asymptotes. Okay. On the left piece, left side, I have a point here at falling apart. Garbage. Got this. Get this to right. Okay. -2, -1/2 is going to move 1 to the right. So -1, -1/2, like here. And the point which was at -1, -1 is going to move 1 to the right to become 0, -1. And the point which was at negative 1/2, negative 2 is going to move 1 to the right to positive 1/2, negative 2. So you're going to get this. So everything shift 1 to the right. So this is y equals 1 over x plus 1. Okay? Now I'm going to do one more graph here. My final graph where I shift everything down 2, I'm going to put that right here. So basically we're going to take our red graph, y equals 1 over x plus 1, and we're going to shift everything down 2 units. So the first thing to do is to shift actually the asymptotes. So the vertical asymptote, if you shift it down, it doesn't change, right? It's still here at this vertical line, x equals 1. But the horizontal asymptote, which was along the x-axis, moves down 2 units to y equals 2. And then we're going to have to shift all our right points down 2. So I'm going to use a blue here, I guess. Yeah. So let's start with the point 3, 1/2. 3, 1/2. Let's shift it down 2. So it's going to be a 1, 2. So it'll be 3, negative 1.5. Okay, now I'm going to shift 2, 1 down 2. And it's going to go to 2, negative 1. And then I'm going to take the red point of 0.5, not 1.5, 2, 1.5, 2, and move it down 2. It's going to be 1.5, 0, right there. I'm going to connect these right points, and they got to follow the asymptotes. I'm making this a solid line because it's my final. No, I guess I made the others one solid lines as well. Okay. All right, so I'm not doing dashed lines on these. We don't want to confuse the dashed lines with asymptotes. All right, now let's take the red points from the red graph on the left side of the vertical asymptote, and let's shift them down too. So I'm going to begin with, let's see, negative 1, negative 1/2. So let's start negative 1, negative 1/2, and shift it down to 1, 2, and you get, let's see, negative 1, negative 2.5, negative 1, negative 2.5 when you move that down 2. Now let's go to the point, what's the next point here? 0, negative 1, and let's move it down to, that becomes 0, negative 3. And then let's go to 0.5, negative 2, and move that down 2, and you get 0.5, negative 4. So those are your points, and you connect those, and you get this. This is our final graph here. This is y equals 1 over x plus 1, and then minus 2. This is it. This is the final graph. All right, so I think that should be enough